Hello everyone and welcome to Sci-Fi Zone, where we celebrate science fiction movies and TV shows from the past, the present and the future. I'm here today with Claire and MPS, and we're coming to you from the comic book store of alternate worlds. It's very exciting stuff. And I'll tell you what is exciting is what MPS is about to discuss. So MPS, excite me.
Well, many years ago, back in the 80s, when most of us were always little younglings, there was an awesome TV show called The Greatest American Hero, and it ran for 3 seasons. Okay, and it told a story about Ralph Hinckley, or Hanley, because back then they had to change his name because a certain Hinckley decided to try and shoot a certain president, so they had to change the name of the character for 2 seasons. Then they brought it back at the end. It confused everyone. But then they decided that they were going to finish up the series, which was a bit of a shame at the time, and start a new series. Now what they did is they shot the pilot episode in 1983 and then showed it in 1986, so they did a couple of updates. And what they did is they brought in a female hero. So because Ralph had been figured out and all that sort of stuff, and the world knew who he was, and he wasn't such a secret superhero anymore, so they brought in a girl. The problem was the series didn't work. The pilot episode flopped badly, which is not the point of what I want to discuss. So you remember the story, Ralph gets a suit from the aliens, loses the instructions, gets another set of instructions, loses them as well. So he has to figure out how to use the suit. She figures out how to use the suit before Bill Maxwell teaches her how to do things. So it's pretty impressive. That wouldn't work today in any sort of film you sort of see. The only time, look, we've seen the new Shazam film and it sort of works a little bit, but he figures it out quickly. But you couldn't have anyone as dim-witted as Ralph in today's society trying to figure out a costume or a suit or anything like that with everything that we know today. But back in the day, it was pretty limited, you know. He even gets told by a kid in the pilot episode, you've got to take 3 steps, then jump. That's how you do it. To sort of fly.
So in other words, he couldn't Google it, is that right?
He could Google it, that's the thing, you could do everything. Nowadays. So there'd be no one on this planet who, if you were given a suit and you had the ability to do it, could turn around and say, well, I know how to fly, I just have to take a couple of steps and do that. So the series of a person being given a suit and being, as like I said, dim-witted or not used to having this sort of information, it just wouldn't work today, I don't think. You know, so it worked with Shazam a little bit because he was a kid, and not all kids are into comic books and that sort of thing. But I don't think it would work.
There was a little bit of it in Spider-Man too, where he's figuring out how to do bits and pieces.
Yeah, that's possibly a little bit different because a radioactive spider bites him. Yeah. So
but he's got to figure out how it works.
And he's becoming a teenager. You know, and there's a very funny scene with the Tobey Maguire film where there's just webs everywhere. Yes. But in this instance, where a grown adult gets given a suit with a set of instructions that he loses twice.
Well, and that's one of the things for me is, okay, you lose the instructions the first time, but seriously, he lost them again. Yeah. And the premise of the show wouldn't have worked without that. And having a female, I think that's less likely to happen in the first place.
Yeah, well, like I said, she already figured out all the powers. You know, Bill went to test her and everything, and she already went, oh, hang on, I can disappear, I can do this, I can run at super speed, I can fly, I can do whatever the case is.
Well, it wouldn't have made sense to have her go through the same rigmarole that he went through. So
because he knows it, so he can pass that information on to her.
Oh, it's not that. I mean, just from an audience's point of view, it'd be like watching the same thing all over again.
Yeah, true.
We've been there, done that. It's like, it just cut to the chase. She's got the powers. Let's just do something different with it. That's how I would have seen it at the time anyway. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just going through because as the audience, you'd be going, you can do all this stuff. We've seen this in the other show.
We know it can happen.
We don't need to sort of see it all over again. And I mean, if the show was made today, you could probably do it and get away with it, but not only like a couple of years after the original, that wouldn't have made sense.
But what they could have done with it was the 2 characters, her and Bill. I mean, Bill and Ralph, like a lot of what the show was about was the conflict between the 2 of them. Their ideology was quite different. What they wanted out of it was quite different. And the pilot set that up really well for the female version. She was very much a do-gooder. She was someone who, you know, she taught children and saved puppies and all those sorts of things. It was a bit sort of obvious, but it was there. And Bill's not the opposite because he definitely wants to help, but has completely different priorities. So it would have been quite interesting to see the conflict between the 2 of them. Ralph was a high school teacher and not a particularly strong personality, I think. whereas the girl was very. She knew what she wanted. She knew.
She almost fobs him off at one point, saying, "Oh, whatever you."
She can do it without it. She thinks she can do it without him.
Yeah.
So that would have been. I think that could have been quite an interesting way to go with it.
Do you think they did that because they wanted to, trying to put it in a nice way, show female superiority at that time, to say, well, we've had the dumb guy, now we've got the woman who's come in and just got it really switched on from day one. That was actually intentional.
I don't know, because she was very ditzy.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know that would have come across particularly clearly, but that may have been one of the reasons why it didn't get picked up, because it showed the woman managing it better and being quicker on the uptake and that sort of stuff. That may have been, at the time, one of the reasons why it didn't get made.
It's the kind of thing I think if they would make it today, even though there's a lot of superhero stuff going on, it's a little bit of a gluttony of these things. Yeah, it could probably do quite well, actually.
See, I don't think it would, because you've got someone who has to have never seen or interacted with anything in today's society that's superhero related.
Well,
that's very hard to do.
That whole figuring it out thing wouldn't work as well.
No.
I mean, you could have a little bit of it, like in Shazam and those sorts of ones, but that's not the entire story. Yeah. And I think it would be kind of interesting to have someone who is just a person. Like the superheroes, most of them anyway, not all of them, but most of them, their powers come from themselves. Superman and Captain Marvel and those sorts of ones. There are definitely exceptions, but even with the exceptions, they tend not to be just an ordinary person. And if you could have that ordinary person still, and team them up with someone from the FBI or wherever, I think that could still be quite an interesting story.
So where can this show be watched if it never got released?
It's actually released on the DVD box set.
There you go.
So you can watch it there, and I believe it's on YouTube as well, so check that out there. But yeah, if you've got the box set, definitely watch it. Be aware that it is a 4:3 ratio aspect.
Oh
and
my God!
You will have to just
adjust your eyes.
And don't adjust the TV to make it stretch, because then the lady's going to be putting on weight when you least expect it. So that's not a very pretty thing at all. So very good stuff. So while you get a bit of a Greatest American Hero fix, we'll be back right after these messages.
Alternate Worlds has been specialising in comics and collectibles for over 40 years, with a back issue collection of over 500,000 comics covering the golden age right through to latest releases, including signed and slabbed gems. They also have an enormous graphic novel collection, one of the largest ranges of manga in the country, as well as toys, statues and pops, and new items are arriving every Wednesday. Each month, Alternate Worlds hosts its own premium comic day, where all the rare treasures are put on display for inspection and purchase. The store also runs regular tournaments and competitions for both comic and gaming fans. And for local and interstate and international buyers, the Alternate Worlds website features their complete range of products, so whether you come in online or in store, visit them soon.
Okay, welcome back. Earlier on we were talking about TV shows, and the coolest thing about a TV show is its intro. Every TV show has them. Some are definitely better than others, and we've actually got a listing of a few that we've come up with that we think, you know what, these are actually like great for whatever reason, or something that you definitely remember. One of the things that I actually remember off the top of my head was the $6 Million Man. Absolutely fantastic concept. About the plane crashing, which actually was a real plane crash too, by the way, in case you didn't know that. It was actually a test plane that crashed. Not sure what happened to the astronaut. I think he survived. But I thought it was very mature, very adult, and very switched on. It wasn't like fluffy or full of like laughs and giggles. It was actually very, very hardcore stuff. And when they were saying that they could rebuild him for the $6 million, you actually did believe it, the whole bionics thing. I think that was absolutely fantastic. You remember that from the 70s? I think even today it still holds up.
Well, the interesting thing is I do remember it, even though I have never seen an episode of the show.
Yeah.
That particular intro really, it caught the imagination, and it told you what was, gave you real expectations of what the show was going to be like.
Absolutely. And even today, as I said, it still holds up, and you do wonder, it's like, what's going to happen to the guy? So it was very, very groovy. Doctor Who is one that is absolutely iconic throughout the ages, from the early versions right down to the more current 3D, CG stuff.
And it's interesting that they change it for each Doctor, so it's a little bit different every time. Yeah. In the original series, the music didn't change. now the music even changes a little bit for each of the Doctors. But the background, the way it works, the Peter Capaldi with all the time, the clocks, those sorts of things. I love it.
I think it's the music that makes, especially the more modern music, which has all been really spunked up and has like got a real good beat to it. I think
but still instantly recognisable.
Yeah, absolutely, and because everybody loves it. Woo woo. Anyway, so there you go. One intro sequence that really appeals to me for very different reasons is Westworld. Very. The design of it all, the idea being that they're actually like 3D printing people and horses and whatever using all this white liquid, and just the way it's done. It is very unique, very artistic. That's probably the word I'm looking for. Very creative, and it sets the mood of the show from the outset. And of all the TV shows that show images of who the people are that are in the show, this one sort of doesn't. And for that reason, it's almost like a piece of art unto itself, and well worth having a look at just for that. But it is a bit weird at the same time seeing people actually being created using this process. So there you go, there's another one for you. Good old Star Trek. Now, which one of Star Trek are you going to pick? I personally liked Enterprise with the song. A lot of people had issues with it.
Yeah, there was a lot of pushback when that came out with words instead of just music. I like it.
But yeah, showing the history of space flight and all the rest of it, it was absolutely fantastic.
In terms of music, I like the Voyager music. And I like there's one point where they're flying through one of the rings on the planet, and you hear the rattling against the hull, that sort of stuff. I love that. But Enterprise was really good, and one of the things they did, of course, in Enterprise was when they had the Mirror Universe episodes.
Yeah, they changed it.
They changed the intro to be what it would be if it were in that world, which was really well done.
Yeah, and it's very different from the other shows, and I thought that's what made it work. But yeah, it worked for some people and didn't work for others. But definitely it stood out. There's no doubt about that, and I thought, kudos to them for doing something a little bit different. Yeah, because as you're saying with Deep Space Nine and Voyager, I remember fans who used to watch Deep Space Nine. They would actually look at the opening sequence and they go, "It's the bottom, it's the top, it's the pylon, it's the left, it's the right," because you're just showing shots of the station. So I thought that was kind of funny. Another one for English buffs out there, Space 1999. What an absolutely fantastic way of opening the show. The only thing that I wasn't a fan of, because you get the ship that comes down and explodes, and that's when the music kicks off. The only thing I didn't really like is they would show what was happening within that episode. So it actually said in this episode, and then it would just flash all these things, which you could argue were spoilers. So
that was done at the time, though. There were a few shows that did that at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it meant that every episode, every intro had to be different to the previous one. And I thought that's kind of different, rather than just saying, "Here's our intro for the season, and thanks for coming." But in terms of with the high tech music and the look of the of Moonbase Alpha as well as the Eagles, I had to give them a lot of credit for that. It was actually very, very, very groovy. Two more for me. The Twilight Zone, the original version, the old. Everybody knows the music. Even if you've never seen it, people just know the tune. And there was a few different variations for the different seasons with Rod Serling's voice, absolutely fantastic. And I think it's just one of those things. It's just an immortal classic that people just know, even if they've never watched an episode. And I don't think that the newer versions of the show sort of captured the same magic that the original did. Even though with the newer versions they can make the thing a lot more, the visuals a lot more appealing, I still think that the classic version is the one to go with. But my favourite of the whole lot, and I have a reason for this, and I think a lot of people out there would be supporting this decision, is Babylon 5. Every season had a different opening, and every season had different music in their intros. And all the music was done by the same person, but every season the tune was different and the intros were different, and they were just magic to watch. And they actually got better as the seasons went on. There was 5 seasons, and I think it'd be easy for a show to say, "Here's our intro, we'll just stick with that." But no, they made a point of redesigning every intro for every season, as well as the music, and that alone. And the music is fantastic to listen to. It was really cutting edge at the time, and of course the show was cutting edge, using digital effects for all its spaceship scenes and whatever. And for that reason, I think a lot of people would go with Babylon 5 if the option was there. So there you go.
All right, so for me, it's one of those catchy tunes that catches me for wanting to have a great intro to a show. So some of the cartoon ones I love especially were Transformers, More Than Meets the Eye, and Take a Drink Now, because when you hear the Autobots go and change, they go Inspector Gadget.
He needs a spittoon
You
for
need the
that.
spit as well. Inspector Gadget. You
Oh,
could not
yes.
love Inspector Gadget. You know, Don Adams as Inspector Gadget
Yeah.
was just fantastic. And I always wanted one of those computer books. I actually tried to buy some electronics books to to build one of those, and now they're iPads.
Yep, that's right.
So, you know, the technology came for us. Battle of the Planets. You know, the opening long sequence, and we'll do a whole show on this because
it's all the music that you're into, isn't it, really?
well, it's the music intros that got me sucked into these shows in the first place. If I didn't have the intros, I wouldn't be watching the shows. Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles, classic, you know, dun 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 dun. Dun. It's just, you can't get past those. And the words, it's the words that you know. It's like the Jetsons, you know. Meet George Jetson, his wife, Judy, his daughter Judy, Dane, his wife. You know, you got.
So I think everybody just knows who George is. They forget everybody else.
Yeah.
Daughter Judy, Janie's wife.
Yeah.
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. You know, you can't go without an intro, without a character introducing himself. You know, and his villains and the bad guys and who knows what he is, and then changing in front of you. You know, I have the power, but just too many iconic sort of ones to go through. Then again, there's also the quite kooky ones like the X-Files, you know.
Yeah, I loved the X-Files one.
The X-Files had that sort of Twilight Zone-esque.
Yeah.
I think the music definitely made that.
Yeah, for sure.
definitely.
Just that eerie little, just those few little notes.
Yeah, at the
Yeah,
start.
just
Yep, everybody knows
Recognise
that.
instantly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you get there and you sort of go, oh, could be creepy. And then there were some creepy episodes. But these are all just memorable sort of catchy tunes that stick with you. You know, you could be sitting at work doing something and all of a sudden, dun 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 dun, and it just sits with you for a while, and it's fun, and that's what it's about. The show could be, you know, whatever the show, but the intro, you know, it's like that scene in Demolition Man, where all they're listening to in the car was all the ads for shows, and they were saying, you know, this was the greatest hit for whatever, but it was an ad for a show or a TV intro. That was their actual music, not actual music.
So what this tells you about MPS is he would watch the intros to the shows and then switch off and go somewhere else and go outside and play ball or whatever. So there you go.
I will YouTube intros for shows for hours.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yes, some intros are absolutely iconic for a lot of different reasons. Got room for a couple more?
Yeah, I got room for a couple more. What would you want?
Two more.
I'm going to give you.
Pick a good one. Go on.
I'm going to give you Pinky in the Brain.
Of course you are.
See, that's a good one because one's a genius, the other one's insane. You know, you couldn't have two little lab mice doing what they do because they're Pinky and the brain. And what do we do tonight, Brain?
Same thing we do every night.
Try to take over the world.
And you're lucky last.
See, and the last one I'm going to throw out will probably be, actually, it's an outro.
Oh.
And it's a little bit different. So intros are all. What sort of gets me sometimes is you've got a show that ends on a sad note, and the show has this upbeat tune which really takes you out of the moment.
Yep.
But the one that always got me was The Incredible Hulk. It always ended on a sad note, and the music for the outro was just as sad. So you never felt that it was one of those things where you went, oh my God, you know, he's Incredible Hulk, he crushes, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
It was always that sad music towards the end, and that made that show for me so much more memorable. I don't remember the start of it, but I remember the sad music at the end because he's always walking down the road hitchhiking to his next destination.
And I'll tell you what is sad. It's the end of the episode, so there you go. How cool is that? So if you haven't done so already, so I'm just going to cut you off because I like making people sad is what I do. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell for all the latest updates and reminders of everything that's happening in the world. We'll be back next week, believe it or not. So in the interim, make sure you stay in the zone and bye for now.